and welcome to Tirana, Albania for this special edition of Talking Europe. We're here for one of our agricultural shows, and where better to come than a country that claims to have one of the oldest farming sites in all of Europe. Indeed, agriculture in Albania is said to date back to the Neolithic age. Today, a quarter of the land is devoted to it, over half of the workforce employed in the agricultural sector. Albania, of course, not yet an EU country, but it did gain accession status in 2014. As a result, it already receives some funding and aid in order to develop its agricultural sector. But what kind of aid and for what in return? Our reporter Luke Brown went to find out.
Florin Mandreu has a lot to thank the EU for. Over the past 4 years, this dairy operation and processing plant has received €80,000 in European funds.
That is the old cowshed before we got the EU funds. And this is the new one that we built with EU funds. I have increased my herd from 50 to 300 cows.
Increased productivity means more jobs for the region. The farm and renovated factory here created 7 full-time jobs. That fulfills part of the EU's objective, which is to promote rural development in candidate countries.
Often the salary for our employees is the only one in their family. I can't say we perform miracles, but I really think their quality of life has improved.
Agriculture represents 50% of Albania's workforce, but the farming sector has been underfunded for decades, particularly since the end of communist rule. Today, farmers willing to invest can get financial help. The EU's pre-accession assistance programme, along with the Albanian state, offers farmers to cover half the costs of new projects. And the EU can provide a bigger slice, up to 15% more, to encourage young people and women like Ilona Mandreu to take a bigger role.
Before, I'd never had a job in a company. It's the first time. It's a very complex sector for a woman, and for anyone.
Albania officially became a candidate to join the EU in 2014. The current programme of EU assistance initially set aside €24 million to bring the agricultural sector up to EU standards. Out of over 250 applications, 78 have been accepted for over €4.5 million of grants.
The farmers and the agribusinesses will receive more money, but they have to comply with stricter requirements, European requirements, and then to show that they are creating more jobs. These are big investments, and our hopes are big that we will succeed really to make a big change in the country.
So far then, only a third of applicants have been accepted. In reality, few Albanian farmers are meeting the EU's demanding selection criteria.
The majority, they have been rejected, and most of them they have rejected for missing of the knowledge and non-possibility to accomplish all the documents, and not for the blame of farmers.
One of those disappointed was Elcion Remili. His family farm's application was rejected. It's one of the biggest milk producers in the country. His father has invested €2 million over the past decade.
It's an investment oriented on quality. So we focused on what could be the best solution for us in the long term. If it was in the short term, just to get access to some funds or grants, that would be cheap cows in order to just move fast with everything. But we chose investing in more expensive cows.
24-year-old Elcion returned from working in Switzerland to help run the family business. The EU, with or without IPARD funding, remains a tantalising opportunity.
So we had the need for such funding, we had the need for such opportunity. But we learned to accept that, and we learned to grow with it. We learned to build up more information and more intel on how we deal with international approaches in Albania.
The European Union's assistance in Albania is currently implemented by Germany's International Cooperation Agency. The EU eventually hopes to entrust the funds to the Albanian authorities to distribute themselves. Amid concerns about ongoing corruption, the next tranche of aid will be considerably bigger, €71 million up to 2020.
Well, with me now I have the Albanian Minister for Agriculture, Mr. Edmund Panariti. Thanks for your time, Mr. Panariti.
Thank you for inviting.
And lovely to be at this beautiful farm just on the outskirts of the capital, Tirana. We've been looking, Mr. Panariti, at the EU aid when it comes to some funding, but a lot of also advice and structural changes that they want to make here in Albania when it comes to agriculture. What kind of changes can you see happening and being of benefit for farming here?
When I took office here, I signed a very important agreement with the EU. We signed a overall grant of about 96 million euro, which will be provided as grant to the farmers, to the agribusiness for the period from 2016-2020, from the EU to the Albanian farmers. And of course, the Albanian government will contribute with its funds.
Okay, so that's money, extra money from the EU to strengthen the agricultural sector. But traditionally, if I understand correctly, farms here in Albania are relatively small. They're family farms. They make produce really for their own table. Does the EU want to see this change? Maybe you have more bigger farms, more intensive farming?
You are right. We have fragmented agriculture. The average size of our farms is not bigger than 1.2 hectares, which is too small to be competitive. Now, how we are going to change that? There are two ways. First, to have a land market, a sell and buy thing. That is why the EU is supporting the certificates of ownership for these farms to the farmers who already possess these pieces of land, so then they can start a sell and buy process, and you can have a larger size of farming. And if this does not work properly, there is another model, the so-called contract farming. So you have an aggregator, which EU supports with EU funds, and the aggregators organizes the farmers. So there is a kind of virtual unification of smaller farmers on a single product. Let's say that they decide to produce only kiwi, because the market demands kiwi. The fastest growing model is contract farming. There is not too much sell and buy because there are complicated issues which takes time. That is why EU money is targeting the aggregator, because aggregators provide a perspective to the farmers for selling their product.
Today, there's no link between Albanian produce and EU markets?
Absolutely, because I mean, if a French enterprise, for instance, would like to import some products, they cannot go after single farmers.
I believe this particular farm, the Uka farm, was started by a former Minister of Agriculture. Let's find out a little bit more about this particular farm from one of his sons who works here.
Yeah.
Uka farm is a project started from my father. My father is an entomologist, agriculture, plant protection. He was a Minister of Agriculture as well, but he left politics for this farm. We made it an added value. It is the agritourism. So we added the winery, then in 2014 the restaurant. As we are 2 hectares, and this is the average of the Albanian farming, this is even the handicap of agriculture in Albania, that we cannot be competitive on the market. So agritourism is something you can add to your farm and make it a successful economy. Until now, we didn't get help from the state. It is not easy to get help from the state, from what I know personally, from my experience. In the future, we wish the state will see what the agriculture can be in Albania. This is a very good example because it is a successful business until now. It's one of the first successful business in agriculture in this small area. We need support from the state.
So hearing there, you know, possible development of 2 of Albania's biggest sectors, agriculture and tourism joining. But let's look again at farming in general. There seems to be quite a lot of organic farmers in Albania, more perhaps than in other EU states. Is that something that is new? Is it going to continue? Because indeed, GMO, genetically modified seeds, have been used in Albania for some time now. How do you? Is that possible to go backwards on that?
Now we are getting stricter on that. We are abiding to the EU standards on banning of GMO seeds and seedlings. We need to be very careful with the GMO seeds. They can destroy the endemic species.
The French very much are fond of their labels to protect geographical specific regional products that exist in Albania.
Something that we're trying to put in place. For instance, since you come from France, and France is very well known for the production of wine and grapes. For instance, we have endemic species of grapes, and which grows only in a particular area in the mountains, and this produces a very special wine. And we have been able to provide a GI for this product.
Okay, so interesting to see the new appreciation, if you like, for those native species of products, a geographical indicator protection perhaps for Albanian wine, for the heavily exported olive oil, but also there's a special breed of Albanian goat. And our reporter Luke Brown went to meet with the farmers and French researchers that are helping them gain that very special label of protection for a certain region and a certain product.
These goats are a source of pride for Muharrem Jebagia and his family. His flock is made up of a unique breed that can thrive in the rugged Hasi mountains of northern Albania.
It's very rare. It's got this reddish coat, and its hooves are well adapted to hard terrain. It can resist the winter.
The farm has been passed down from generation to generation, just like the techniques used by Muharrem and his 3 brothers.
If my children want to, they can continue, but if they don't want to, then technology can take their place. We already have a machine for milking, but I prefer to do it by hand, to continue my father's traditions.
In the shadow of Mount Pashtriku, Castriot Daichi has the biggest flock in the region. He's also in charge of the association that aims to obtain a geographic indicator label for the Hasi goats. The label certifies the quality of his produce and has pushed up its price at local markets. He hopes that will make the way of life here viable.
The label helps us for the sale of the meat, the cheese and the milk. It means we're recognized on the markets. We've seen the sales increase thanks to the label. The interest is helping push up the price.
It's not an undertaking the farmers could face alone. Petrit Dobi teaches at the Tirana Agricultural University. For the past 5 years, along with a team of French researchers, he's been preparing the label's code of practice. One key criterion: the goats must graze in the mountain pasture for more than 300 days a year, a sign of quality.
This is plant used for cooking because it has some essential oils. And if animals eat this, all these essential oils are concentrated in the meat.
The mountainous areas of Albania are the country's poorest. Since 1990, the number of herds has fallen by 3/4 as young people leave to find work elsewhere. The programme has already helped to stabilise the number of goats. Reversing the population decline remains a key objective.
The geographic indicator label helps create the means to stop the depopulation that is becoming very common in our country.
The project received €1.2 million from the French Fund for the Global Environment. The aim is to protect biodiversity and promote social development. An added bonus, fulfilling the label criteria is a model for reaching EU standards.
In the pre-accession process, it really helps to have these exchanges to get the Albanian regulatory system up to scratch.
The French funding for the project will not be renewed at the end of this year, handing responsibility for a durable programme to the locals.
It doesn't belong to a company, but belong to the people, to the community. We will continue being present here in the area, supporting farmers to develop, to change their mentality and to spend some more time and probably some more money in promoting the breed in the future.
For now, while it is a local success, the Hasi goat label is only recognised in Albania and not in the rest of Europe. Albania is also working towards getting protected status for its wild blueberries, chestnuts and honey.
Well, with me now I have Alma Chupi, an Albanian journalist specialised, if you like, in agriculture. Alma, you've brought us to another farm on the outskirts of the capital, Tirana. But first of all, we're sitting in front of these goats. Yeah. French goats in Albania. We've just been looking at a report, looking at getting labels to protect Albanian produce, and yet here we are. Are the French goats better?
We have to keep rare races because Albania has good potential in such races. They are wild. Of course, they give little milk, but good milk. These goats gives a lot of milk, and this is the reason that the owner has buy from France.
As it gets some EU involvement, are you worried that Albanian agriculture could become the same as all the rest?
I think our government hasn't think a lot about the people who live in the rural areas. I'm talking for the people who live up to the mountains, where the product is very unique, and we have to keep the people there. The government think that they have to develop farms, big farms, but Albania is not like Holland. Yeah. We haven't so much land. We can't compete with other countries. We can compete only with unique products. Greece has labeled cheese feta, white cheese from Greece. Our cheese is better, okay? We have the same cheese and better, but we don't have label.
And yet it's, 50% of the Albanian workforce, it's, almost 20% of the country's GDP. Why is it not getting more attention from the government?
Why? This is a good question. Because after communism, we have a sad story. In communism, everybody hates the lands because at the time, the dictator took the lands from their properties. Now they want to come back and to live there. And it's the right moment because we have passed the transition, our transition, not only economical transition, but the mentality. And it's the right moment to help them to give the good direction where to invest the money. In the unique product, in the hybrid product, or...
Okay, so there you heard it. Now is the time for the Albanian government and indeed Albanian farmers across the country to decide where they want the future of agriculture to go. Alma Chupi, thanks so much for your time. Thanks also to you at home for having watched this half of Talking Europe. But join us again after the news. We'll be crossing over to France to see how that founding EU member is working with non-EU members when it comes to farming. See you then.